4th. Welcome to tonight's school committee meeting. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast through local media and outlets that are present. If anyone wishes to have the rebroadcast, please contact the school administration or someone on the school committee. Be more than happy to give you those correspondence. First on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have two minutes to approve. First is the December 20th minutes. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes? Motion by Jim, seconded by Megan. All in favor? Also, we have January 3rd minutes that have approval, and I'm assuming everyone had the chance to go through them all? Yeah. Go ahead.
Joe, if you will, can we just change Melissa to Miss Bullock?
I'm sorry?
Can you just change Melissa to Miss Bullock in the minutes? Thank you.
Yep. And with that, can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Motion by Megan, seconded by Jen. All in favor? Next on the agenda is announcements, correspondence, and distributions. Anyone got anything they'd like to bring up? What?
Sure. The kindergarten parent information night and the pre-registration is going to occur in a couple weeks. It's on Tuesday, February 26th. It's at the high school. It's from 6 to 6:30. There'll be a presentation, and the registration will take place from 6:30 to 7:30. So if you have a kindergartner or you know of somebody who has a kindergartner, please encourage them to attend this night on the 26th of February.
Thank you, Laura. Anybody else? Kevin?
You know what, I actually have one.
Of course you do.
Let me just pull it up. So we're going to have a presentation on the budget, and it is on February 5th at 7 p.m. in the Milford High School auditorium. And again, this presentation will share the current state of the preparation of the 1920 school budget with parents and community members, the alignment of the budget to our strategic priorities, and we're available to answer any questions about the process or any aspect of the budget proposal. And again, February 5th at 7 p.m. in the Milford High School auditorium.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank
Anybody
you.
else? Craig?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the just about 2,900 people who filled out the school start time survey. That was between students, parents, and teachers. And currently, we're analyzing the data, and we'll get back to everybody on what we turned up. So, thank you.
Thank you, Craig. And that's it. Next on the agenda, invitation to speak. Nope, no one. And next, report of the superintendent of schools.
So I wanted to provide just a mid-year review of my goals, and we've talked about a lot of these things over the last several meetings when we talked about the strategic plan, so I'm going to kind of buzz through it relatively quickly. But if you want to stop me and ask a question on any aspect as I'm going through, I think a lot of the material is going to seem pretty familiar to this group. So there were 6 goals, and I'm just going to read through them really quickly. The first goal is to foster a culture of continuous learning and growth for all students. The second is to lead the completion of the long-range education facilities plan. The third goal is to ensure that technology implementation and digital tools support the learning of all students. The fourth goal is to foster high expectations for instruction and learning through administrator professional development that focuses on high-impact strategies for student learning and growth. The fifth is to provide leadership for the implementation and expansion of social emotional learning programming. And sixth is to promote the success of all students by collaborating with families, community members, and higher education and business partners. So the first goal, foster a culture of continuous learning and growth for all students. There's a specific focus on mathematics achievement, which we've discussed at length. We've also talked about assessing the elementary math intervention programs and making shifts to ensure resources are maximized to support learners. Providing a gap-filling remediation and mathematics course for all students at Milford High School. We've added 3 sections of that this year, and it's going very well. Develop and refine common assessments and benchmarks, and begin to review their effectiveness as tools for determining student understanding and learning. And piloting a mathematics interim assessment system at Woodland Elementary School to support educator use of data-driven instruction. For that one, we've actually expanded it out. We're going to be doing this in the spring as well, and you're talking about this tonight, right, Craig? So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that, but we're also piloting another another platform as well, a Renaissance Star program that Craig's going to talk about in more detail, and supporting principals in the development of interventions by schools to close gaps in student mathematics understanding. I did the wrong thing. So for mathematics achievement and growth, across the district, in Woodland, we've implemented the ST Math program, and students are using that approximately for 60 minutes every single week. And I think we're seeing some good results. We're getting some very positive feedback from both teachers and students on that. Again, we've added the course at Milford High School to meet the needs of any students that are at risk of not passing the 10th grade math MCAS. And I'm going to click forward. We've seen that data before. This is just the usage data for the ST Math program. This is the pilot data for the math course that we're doing at the high school. And again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because we've already talked about it. So I want to spend a couple seconds on Stacy Middle School. And we've done a few things there that I think are interesting. We're going to see what the impact is this year. At the beginning of this year, we converted a reading intervention teacher to a math intervention teacher to reduce class size issues in Algebra 1 and also provide support to struggling learners. And this teacher is spending about 60% of her time teaching algebra courses and about 40% of her time on intervention. And one of the issues we have at Stacy because of the kind of staggered schedule is it's very difficult to share staff across grade levels because the classes kind of overlap each other. So you couldn't, like somebody who was a 7th grade intervention teacher would have a hard time jumping into the 8th or the 6th grade schedule. So this has been a really nice solution to, we had a very high enrollment in Algebra 1 this particular year, and it's one of our larger classes just across the Milford Public Schools. So in the future, I think the focus will be on potentially addressing, higher enrollment at a particular level in 8th grade mathematics, but also providing additional support to some of our struggling learners. The second thing they're doing is they've got a math literacy intervention course that meets 2 times in a 6-day schedule, and it's currently serving 42 6th graders, 45 7th graders, and 34 8th graders. And through the use of data, they're kind of targeting key standards and areas of misconception to kind of close those gaps in understanding. There's also going to be a Stacy Succeeds after-school program, and for this program, we're targeting students in each grade level who were categorized as partially meeting expectations on the previous year's MCAS, and families should have received, I think they're either receiving them this week or may have just received those letters, and we'll be running that program from February till the end of April, and maybe into the first week of May, and then kind of the MCAS test kind of kicks off. The focus on the Tuesday contractual days for teachers has been benchmark and standard alignment work, which is also kind of the development of those common assessments we were talking about. And then we have 4 faculty members who are attending a program sponsored by the Department of Education, both in January and I believe it's either March or April, called Closing the Achievement Gap for Special Education. This focuses specifically on both literacy and mathematics. Again. We've talked about common assessments before, and we've got a number of things going on across the district. The MCIE performance assessments, which we targeted 3 grade levels for those as kind of an initial rollout. And do you want to talk about that real quick, Craig?
Sure. We have, right now, actually we have 3 teachers in the 3 4th grade math teachers that are participating, and then it was 3 7th grade science teachers that are participating in building performance assessments that are going to be cross-district performance assessments. We're also in the 4th grade. Next move in the 4th grade is to see if we can get the other teachers to also give the assessment so that we have some more data. I don't know, and they're right now I think they're fully built. I think that the teachers, they've worked with people from the other member districts and have created these performance assessments, so now it's just a matter of figuring out the right time to give the assessment and then actually analyze the data. So,
Craig, is it 1 per year or 1 per semester? Or just
well, I think eventually, if we want performance assessments to really kind of be the rule in how we are looking at whether or not students are making progress, then they have to be multiple times during the year, and it should be probably 3 times a year. And then I think if you do it 3 times a year, I think teachers can look at that data, make adjustments to their practice, and then work with kids so that they can do another performance assessment, and then we can see the growth. I think that's a much better system than just an MCAS that's given 1 time a year.
Thanks.
So,
And there's a real opportunity. Craig and I attended, the Superintendent Association does a convening a couple times a year, and we attended it this morning. And the keynote speaker, whose name is escaping me, but also the Commissioner of Education, more importantly, we're talking about just how we need to kind of shift some of our practices around assessment. And I think there's a real kind of opportunity to kind of really dive into this area. And the group that we're a part of, the Massachusetts Consortium on Innovative Educational Assessment, was actually highlighted as part of the presentation as well. And this group on a national level has worked with, and I think I've stated this before, a group of districts in New Hampshire who have gotten a waiver, an ESSA waiver, which has allowed them to kind of move in more of a performance assessment direction rather than kind of the traditional kind of broad, like, state MCAS style of assessment. So I think the conversation was really around, Massachusetts is number 1 in a lot of metrics, but innovation isn't necessarily one of them. And the worry is that, if we sit on our laurels, we might fall behind in kind of some of the key areas where employers are looking at, these are the skills that they want, whether it's a high school graduate or college graduate to have. And, it's not necessarily clear that a standardized test is a good indicator of that kind of readiness. All right. The other piece is Writing with Colors at Milford High School, which has been very, very successful, and they're actually piloting prompts that kind of represent the types of tasks and questions that will be asked on the new MCAS, which is coming to the high school this year. And Stacy grade level departmental teams are creating common assessments, which has been a lot of the focus of their professional development time as well as their contractual Tuesday time. And we talked about MCIEA. So the second one is to lead the completion of the long-range education facilities plan. And there's kind of 2 pieces to this. One is the final creation of the plan, which the goal is to have that done by June of 2019 with community input. And we've already done the initial presentation in October to the school committee. I've set tentative dates for community presentations, and let me go to the slide. It's tricky because I'm doing the clicker and I'm looking at a different screen from my computer. So we're looking at March 4th, March 11th, and March 19th. And the March 4th presentation will be at the Milford High School auditorium. At the March 11th presentation, we're looking at a venue in the community, and I'll probably have something probably in the next week or so, which location we're going to be meeting at. And then on March 19th, we're going to do a presentation in both Spanish and Portuguese, and we have a location downtown. And again, I'll have the details of that shortly.
So, Kevin, so you mentioned incorporating community input by June of 2019. So is the goal to try and get something at a town meeting by fall of 2019?
I think we're probably talking the following year more than likely, just based on some conversations I've had just with like the town departments. But again, I think it's something we can talk about in terms of timeline.
And I think we talked about this at one of the meetings. The submission.
So it's open right now. The statement of interest. Thank you. The statement of interest is open right now. It's an open period right now. It'll be open next year. And again, it's usually like in that February, March, late January to like early March kind of time frame.
Right. And so if we don't get it at fall town meeting of 2019, then we're not going to be able to submit it early 2020, which means that we're looking at fall of 2020 submitting in 2021.
That's probably the most realistic timeline. But again, it's something we can talk about. But I think that's where the input is critically important in terms of, what's the capacity of the town's ability to kind of support, a larger project, whether it's kind of like a high school followed by a middle school, kind of like the more traditional path we talked about, versus that kind of high school, middle school complex with probably Memorial Elementary School following.
If we had the statement of interest ready to go for spring of 2020, does it meet the timelines of that town meeting or not? I guess
I think the issue is you gotta go to town meeting
Town meeting
first
first.
before you submit the statement of
Correct.
interest.
Correct.
because you need that,
You need the financial
funding
support behind it.
Right.
Okay, and that, because the spring town meeting is usually in May.
Right, which would be after the window.
Yeah, but the window closes though in May or?
April.
Is it early
Okay,
April?
is that what it is?
It,
All right.
it varies a little bit year to year,
Okay.
but it's kind of that time,
All
like
right.
the kind of the late winter, early spring kind of
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where you want approval in the fall so that you can then submit January,
Submit in
February.
January, right, exactly.
So
Yep.
in a
Right.
perfect world, we'd have it ready to go this fall and submit January, February of next year.
Exactly, because even once you submit that proposal, now you get into the,
You get into
into
the,
the bottom,
into
into
the
the
kind of
queue,
queue.
bottom of the line,
and then-
so we're still, I know we've talked about it, but it could be a 5 to 10 year process before we truly get to the front of the line.
And that's hard to predict, because that's based
Right.
on like how many submissions are coming in. You know, there's a number of variables they look at in terms
Right.
of, you know, how viable is your project, or, you know, they look at, you know, your maintenance, which we do very well on.
Right.
You know, the age of our roof and the type of our roof is a benefit
Yep.
for us for the high school. But again, it's hard to say once you put it in. But we
Yes,
wanna
yeah.
be, like, we wanna kinda be all lined up with the support as well.
Yes, yeah, true, you know, is this, if FinCom is telling us we need to wait another year, I can understand that, but if not, I think I'd rather see us try to push for next fall. Again, just the sooner the better, it's, you know, we're 8 months away from another town meeting. I was just wondering if we can kinda get our ducks in a row for that.
Yep, yeah, so we've had preliminary talks with some, like, again, some folks on the finance committee and some folks in town. And again, I think part of this process too, we'll get some of that information as well. So based on, like, you know, we'll look at like, when is the town able to kind of take on a big project? Because
Right.
it's a project of a pretty
Exactly,
large
it's not
magnitude.
just, you know, us submitting, but yeah, the town has to understand that there's a burden. I know that FinCom's gonna need to understand what's coming down the line, so, as far as some costs, so, I guess I'm assuming that we're in talks with them and they're understanding that this is coming, this is something that we're looking at.
Yeah, I think everybody's
Yeah.
aware that we're looking at a
Yep.
couple of big projects down the line.
Yep.
It's just, the timeline, we've gotta kind of line up, so the
Okay.
funding kind of matches the timeline.
Okay.
And we can line up that support.
Yep.
Will there be more formal meetings, Kevin, with those groups after the community inputs?
Yeah,
in the next
absolutely,
couple months?
absolutely. So we'll
Okay.
probably bring like maybe the selectmen, the
Great.
FinCom, and
Okay.
probably a couple department heads
So we'll
like
see
that,
that
and-
start to line
yeah,
up as well,
yeah,
great,
yeah.
okay, thanks.
And the technology piece we've talked about quite a bit as well. The Chromebooks delivered to MHS students in September, providing support to teachers during the school year by the tech integration team. Implementation of a collection system for the high school to ensure proper inventory management, which we're actually gonna be, implementing in the 1920 school year. We found a solution, but to implement the solution, we'd have to recollect all the Chromebooks and redistribute them, so that just doesn't seem like a viable option at this point. So we've got a collection system in place that's kind of, I think works for us, but again, I think a more robust system that will be more of a long-term solution we'll be implementing during the 1920 school year. Again, during the summer, we'll be looking at kind of all the processes of distribution, collection, and communication, and trying to improve upon that. This is the first year we've done a full deployment from grades 3 through 12. You know, we had a few hiccups this year. I think, you know, next year, you know, learning from that process, I think it'll be a much smoother deployment next school year. Creating video tutorials for parents and families. Some of that content is already up on the website. And again, enhanced use of technology across the district. And I'm gonna go to the next slide. And this just gives you an example of some of the technology PD offered across the district, which ranges from, you know, ST Math, which is one of our platforms, to introduction to the Chromebook to some of our new faculty members at the high school who haven't used either the Google platform a lot or you know, work with Chromebooks on a daily basis. There's a number of apps and tools we're using, from, you know, Osmo to Google Suite, you know, the iReady programming, and it varies by level, kind of what tools are in use. The great part of the technology integration specialists is they're able to provide that embedded professional development, so they're able to actually work one-on-one or 1-on-5 or with a grade level with the teachers. So you can have your very specific questions answered, and I think it's been very effective. And if you look at Sarah Boyle or Steve Weber, they tend to be the most popular individuals at their respective schools because people inevitably have tons of questions, and the teachers are doing a ton of engaging and innovative things with technology. And I think there's a real spirit of kind of risk taking happening, and like anything else, everybody's on a kind of a continuum. We've got some people who are digital natives who just jump right into it and embrace it, and other folks who might need a little more support because they've taught in a very different way. But we're finding that there's people are embracing it across the board, but they're kind of I guess appetite for like risk or trying something new kind of varies, and I think as they're getting more used to the technology, I think their appetite for risk is increasing, and we're seeing more teachers implementing technology to support learning. And that doesn't mean that there's a ton of great traditional methods that are tried and true that work and are very effective. So I don't want to say technology is completely the answer, but it's a great tool to support learning, and I think we're getting a lot of good mileage out of our tech integration teachers and our training platforms.
On that, yeah.
Programs.
I guess, are we tracking like the usage from different teachers or different schools, different grade levels? Are certain, is math using it less than history, social studies? Just trying to get an idea of, and are we getting feedback from teachers, feedback from parents, feedback from students if they like it or not? And I guess with teachers saying, is it a distraction or is it a help in class? And I guess from all that, we talk a lot about it from the general level in implementing, but I guess from us, if we can kind of see some numbers that, or some feedback to truly know that the investment from the town has been worthwhile.
Yeah. So my one edict was we're not going to impose technology on any teacher.
Yeah.
Now there's a couple exceptions to that, like ST math. We're the expectation there is we're asking everybody to do it 60 minutes a week, basically, like all the students in Woodland to use it 60 minutes a week. But outside of that, we're really not kind of saying, you have to use technology this amount. What we do have, though, is, and this is more from a return on investment kind of an approach, and I forget the name of the tool, but we have a technology tool that actually tracks the usage of all of our software.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a sense of how many students are going on a particular platform. And so when we go back to the budget table and we'll say, hey, we really want, software X, we'll say, well, gosh, it costs $5,000 and only 8 students were using it across the course of the year. Now, it might be a specialized program for a particular, student population, say in special education, and there's a real justification for using it. But it might be that, hey, the teachers thought, hey, this is something we're going to use all the time, and it's just not happening. And those are the kind of questions we'll have. So we're not looking at teacher use per se, but we're looking at more kind of platform use to see in terms of
right, because every teacher's going to utilize a tool in a different method.
Yeah,
like you said, there are some that are more technology driven than others, but as long as they're able to teach the tools that they have.
And that's an important distinction because we're not really we're not really tracking the individual teachers, but we're really looking at of the different software packages we're investing in, how much are we using it and does it make sense? And sometimes we'll see a little bit of a use and then it'll take off.
Sure.
So we don't jump the gun after maybe 1 year or 6 months, but I think over a couple of years, if we say you're really not using this particular tool, then we'd have a conversation with the school, the department, the grade level, and kind of see. And that's part of the iReady, and I don't want to steal Craig's thunder, the iReady and the Renaissance programs is we're really trying to get a sense of how valuable is it. And we got some very positive feedback from iReady initially, and I think the Renaissance is going off in the spring. But one of the tricky things is when you do a textbook adoption process, the people that have textbook Y love textbook Y, and the people that have textbook Z love textbook Z, and you got to kind of figure out what kind of makes the most sense and why. So we're really looking at the different functionality, and and every program has add-ons. So we're trying to see which add-on, if we decide to kind of go more all in on a product. Maybe the iReady has a great intervention program where after the assessment is done, they could say, hey, Joe needs specific work in phonics, so here are 3 lessons in phonics that is going to support his learning development. Those types of things. I don't know if that answered your question completely.
It
but
does, yeah,
The distraction piece is a conversation for sure.
right,
Um,
exactly, yep,
You know, and it just switches from, you know, and when it's like the comic book under the desk to like,
exactly,
going
I
on
know
a
it's a
web-
constant
going on
battle
a
to try
website,
to,
yeah.
you know, deter, you know, usage other than, you know, school, you know, or to only focus in on school usage,
Yep.
and deter any other
Yeah.
usage, so,
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, I guess, has there been feedback from parents alone? Or do we look for that, do we feel like?
It's been kind of mixed. Like some parents love, like I've heard, and this is anecdotal,
Yeah,
but again, like some parents have loved like, you know, the technology in
Yeah.
general, and that seems to be like the general theme.
Yep.
But there's also like how much screen time are kids getting over
right,
the course
exactly,
of the day.
that's what I've heard
and,
back
and,
too,
and,
as
you know,
well.
and so we're kind of looking at that too.
Yep.
And it's a little trickier. Like it's easier at the elementary level because
Mhm.
they have one or two teachers.
Sure.
But when you get to the high school level, you know, everybody's schedule's a little bit, even the middle school level, everybody's schedule's a little bit different, so it's
Sure.
a little trickier to kind of track it.
Okay,
But it's something we're aware of and we're having conversations about, and I think the teachers are also cognizant of like, you know, what are we using it for? Why are we using it? Is it just to kind of replace what we were doing before, or is it actually like enhancing the experience?
right, yeah.
And you know, with writing and a lot of programs, you know, there's a lot of advantages to like, you know, having the teacher to be able to jump onto your essay while you're writing it to give you some feedback in real time is like one example.
Yeah, I guess, you know, are we saving on textbook costs? You know, obviously, you
Not yet.
know,
Yeah.
right, but eventually, is that the outlook where we would save on textbooks? Certainly, we'd have to buy, you know, I'm sure, rights to the learning material digitally as opposed to, you know, hard copies, but, you know, is it less expensive? So is there a long-term investment?
I think it's too early to tell, but I'd
Yeah.
say that the publishing companies haven't caught up to the technology yet.
Okay,
They all have like a textbook with an online component right now, but you have to buy the textbook to get the
Sure.
online component.
okay,
I think the models are gonna shift in terms of how they sell content, and they're starting to shift, cause we're seeing
Right.
like, there's a lot of like free content that's out there that's like just open use, open source.
right,
But there's also, you know, I think the textbook companies are trying to figure out how do they set up a model.
yeah, kinda speaks, we're ahead of the curve as far as deployment of
Correct.
Chromebooks in the class, it's just, yeah, the suppliers haven't caught up with us.
So we're
per
not,
se.
so I think we're a few years away from exclusively having like online content.
Mhm.
So they're still gonna have big backpacks coming home
Right.
for a
Yeah,
while.
yeah.
But I would say, I think there's a possibility in the next 5 to 10 years where I think some of the like the pricing models and packages that the textbook companies and the publishing companies are gonna put out there are gonna shift. And I think like when we go to like performance assessments, you know, in some ways we may move away from like having the one textbook and maybe go to more like unit-based content too. That's a possibility. But again, for me to say, you know, in 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years, this is what's gonna happen, I think it's too early to tell because I think we've gotta kinda see how it evolves. Cause it's changing so quickly.
Right.
All right, so this one I'm just gonna speak to, and I'll have evidence for you at the end of the year, but I wanna kinda speak to where we are with this process. So it's to foster high expectations for instruction and learning through administrative professional development that focuses on high-impact strategies for student learning and growth. We conduct regular walkthroughs with a focus differentiated by building to support the needs of the building administrator. Previously, what we've done is we've used different protocols in different areas of focus to kind of, you know, as a lens to kind of, you know, focus our discussions around the walkthroughs. And this year, what we asked is each principal to either set a focus for the year or set a focus for each session. And I think it's been beneficial because it's been, I think, more helpful for the administrator because I think when we pick, like, say, student engagement or questioning or something like that, they're all good topics, but it might not be necessarily what the administrators, like, kind of want to get a different set of eyes on. And so this has been very helpful. So when we go through, like, Woodland, Tim might have, you know, a specific theme that he focuses on for a couple walkthroughs and maybe shifts based on some trends or things he's seeing in the classrooms. And it's very different from what either Nancy or Josh might be asking us to look at. So it's been interesting to hear the focus of the principals, but it's also been, I think, a more valuable experience. You want to speak to that at all, Craig? Or do you think I captured it?
About,
Just like the shift this year.
no, I mean, you know, I think you said all that can be said about it. I think generally, principals and administrators at each school appreciate having more agency and being able to direct our walkthroughs rather than us saying, hey, this is what we're gonna look at. I think it's more helpful for them. I think you're right, so.
And I gotta give Craig full support for that, because that was his idea.
Do the themes typically last through one walkthrough? I mean, you don't repeat per se, or maybe
You know, it depends. Like,
Okay.
we might be looking
Could be.
at, like, I'll use it, like, student engagement as an example.
Mhm.
Like, we might look at student engagement 3 different times, but maybe
Okay.
say, like, hey, we're gonna go into, like, math classrooms for, 3, 4, and 5, and just look at engagement. And the next time, we're gonna go through ELA or social studies. Or we might say, hey, we wanna just kind of see, teacher questioning. And so it depends. Like, sometimes you can kind of get a decent, like, dipstick
Yep.
one time out.
Sure.
Other times, like, the principal says, hey, let's do this a couple more times, they're
Great.
getting some good information.
Yep.
And it helps them kind of, form, like see some trends and patterns across the school.
Excellent. I was just curious. Thanks.
So like
Yeah.
what Chris brought up earlier about technology, that might be the focus of a walkthrough. We may all go through and say, all right, how are teachers using technology, or how are our students using technology, and is it replacing like a worksheet, and is it just like a digitized
that's a good
worksheet,
example.
or are they doing something else with it? So that might be just an example of how we would get that information.
Could you talk a little bit about how often you're able to do that? Is it 1 or 2 a month, or?
So we do one school, so in the past, we had like a walkthrough week, which kind of screwed up everybody's schedule. So we shifted the schedule this year where we try to do 1 school a week.
Okay.
And so it basically ends up on like a 5 or 6 week rotation. So it's about,
Okay.
we're in about every school every month. But again, like, sometimes life happens, and like this week is midterm week for the high school, and we had a walkthrough
And
schedule for the
you're-
afternoon, which there'd be nobody there.
Right,
So things like that'll happen.
right.
But generally, we're in each school at least once a month,
That's good.
is what we try to do. And then align and implement school improvement plans that are aligned with the MPS strategic plan. One of the things we're trying to focus on is a common way to present it to the school committee this year, where they look at, like, the current year's plan and talk about results. And we're trying to come up with a kind of a format that works for everybody, and that's still in process. And I think we'll probably hit that in our March meeting with our leadership team, and really talk about, like, what makes sense in terms of how do you want to report out the information in a way that's kind of, I think, effective, but also simple and relatively efficient, is, I think, the 3 things we're looking for. And we just wrapped up 10 mind frames for visible learning, teaching for success. We're about to embark on another book, I think in the next, I think we're gonna start it in March. So we try to read 2 or 3 books a week as a group, and we spend a fair amount of time at our meetings kind of discussing what we're reading, because it's usually, some key issue in education, generally around teaching and learning. We've talked about instructional coaching, so I don't want to belabor that, but that's been very promising, and I think very effective so far. The next piece, and Lisa Kincaid's been in, and I think she's done the majority of the work, and I've been very pleased with how the social emotional programming has come around. Let's talk about second step first. I'm 2 slides behind where it counts. There we go. But at Woodland, we had 50 teachers volunteer to pilot the second step program to integrate SEL instruction into the curriculum. Staff have been accessing Lisa Kincaid to either teach a class, provide journals, as well as meet to discuss how the program is progressing. The teachers have extended these lessons into read-alouds in a number of different areas. There's a lot of learning that goes on in the hallways, and I think a lot of the second step is conducive to that kind of collaborative learning environment. We're going to be completing a survey shortly, and we're also looking to get it second step in Spanish during the 1920 school year at every level. And we're also looking at a Portuguese version to kind of meet some of our English learners. If you look at the counseling partnerships with Wayside, this has been great because we brought in bilingual counselors into our schools, and I think that program has been very, very effective. And we've seen great work at MHS, Stacy, Woodland, and Brookside, and each counselor is serving at least 8 students, sometimes more, and it's allowed us to kind of provide a broader counseling experience for our students across the board. We also continue our partnership with Community Impact, and we're reaching out to groups like the Edward M. Kennedy Center and Riverside Emergency Services. And we're just trying to get more kind of on-site resources because we're seeing kind of just greater needs. And, the initial partnerships, there's been a lot of promise, and we're trying to figure out ways where we can get kind of either more counseling staff or supervisory staff kind of on-site, and even crisis staff, in some of our buildings, more consistently. So they're kind of, just a regular presence. But it's been a great partnership so far, and we've been very pleased. We have a webpage for SEL, which was also one of the targets, and we're continuing to add resources on there as we kind of identify them, for parents and families and teachers. And Craig and Lisa are working together again on the mentoring and new teacher induction program, and they're incorporating a lot of SEL components to the mentoring sessions, which I think I think every year, and I got to give a lot of credit to Craig on this as well. We're just developing a more and more robust mentoring and induction program, and it goes well beyond like kind of meeting the expectations of the DESE around like relicensure. It's really kind of a program that introduces the new teachers and educators into Milford, and there's a lot of great conversations that happen. We've developed good relationships with Mendon Upton and Ashland, so teachers are visiting classrooms in all 3 districts and working with new teachers in all 3 districts, so they're seeing just a lot of they're getting kind of a broader view of like what schools look like, what new teaching looks like, and they're hitting on a lot of like key areas. And Craig had a meeting today. And what were you talking about today, Craig? I know I keep putting you on the spot.
Classroom management, and Josh Otlam was presenting and Vicki Houston were presenting, so 2 experts. I think that's an understatement for both of them, but it was great.
And they're meeting on a regular basis, taking full days or getting into, classrooms. They're able to see, they're having their mentors come into their classrooms. So there's a lot of just good practice happening, and an opportunity to get kind of that, feedback that's kind of low stakes and supportive.
But I think the most important part of this whole program is the walkthrough piece, where our teachers are walking through classrooms, because I think it's starting to become ingrained in our culture across all the buildings. I can't remember where we're at, but the other day there was somebody that's been a teacher for 15 or 16 years, and he said, "Hey, how come I don't get to walk through classrooms?" Which is outstanding, So I want to be able to give those opportunities to our veteran teachers too, because if you don't get to see what's happening on the other side of the door, you just think, you think you're not sure where you can improve if you don't see good practices. So I think it's important.
And I think the coaching too has helped that culture, because I think folks are realizing that like we're really trying to kind of support kind of collaborative practice and improve practice, and just there's a recognition that no matter where you are, you can always get better. And I think just building that kind of culture of continuous learning, and to the teachers' credit, they're really buying into it and taking advantage of the resources, which I think is awesome. And I think we're getting more and more requests for the coaching, and I think people look forward to the mentoring meetings, because it's a great way to kind of like engage with your colleagues, because teaching is such a it's a lonely profession to some degree, because you're very few places do you work where you are with your clients all day and not kind of interacting with colleagues on a regular basis, aside for lunch. So we've been doing work from the elementary schools to the high school. The NAN project came into the high school, and talking about signs of suicide and depression, and how to be supportive. We're looking at SEL skills. If we go to trauma training, our goal is to train the entire district. We've developed a nice partnership and another great resource from UMass Memorial Trauma Center. And we've worked, we're working with, our behavioral assistants, our teaching assistants, our teachers, and our administrators to just, have everybody have a better understanding of how trauma could impact a student, on a day-to-day basis, and, how to create supportive environments, how to, support a student who might be in crisis. So I think it's going to generally benefit kind of school climate and culture overall. And then we've done, and again, I give Lisa Kincaid a ton of credit. I think she's kind of taken the ball and really run with it. But we've, brought a lot of our, Milford High School students down to our elementary schools to share, their experiences. How they were once, a first grader who couldn't speak a word of English, and here they are now, like applying to colleges and universities, and are very successful. And you should see the kids' faces in the classrooms just light up when they hear these stories, because obviously the students are talking to them in their native languages, whether it's Spanish or Portuguese, but just to hear like, hey, I was sitting where you were sitting, and look at me now, has been just, it's very, very powerful. Again, we're creating a lot of video content, and Jeremy Folster's been a great partner with Lisa, kind of just developing just great little videos on learning from your mistakes, or how do you reach out for help, or how do you stand up if a friend or another classmate's being bullied. And they're just great, and the kids at the high school are having fun putting the videos together too on top of it. So it's kind of it's learning on a couple different levels. And we're bringing our Portuguese, advanced Portuguese students from the high school down to the elementary schools to kind of support our students down there. And right now we're working at both Brookside and Memorial, and they're in there kind of supporting some of our elementary students who might be struggling to access the curriculum. And they're just providing that additional support and mentoring, which I think is great. And then we'll be working on Say Something Week, which is just making connections for support if you're facing some kind of issue at school, whether it's bullying, violence, suicide, connecting literacy skills and SEL skills. And the other thing that's been, I think, a very nice program they've been running is self-care programs and mindfulness programs for teachers after school. And it's just been like, we've had some of our staff members, and we brought some outside resources in, where they run these kind of mini, like, one-off classes, whether it's, I think we've done some yoga, some mindfulness, some, just some, self-care and supportive kind of SEL type programming. And it's been very, very popular with the teachers. And once they do it once at a school, they always want them back. So that's a good sign. This next slide is just some of the trainings that have gone on, and I've shared this before, but there's a lot happening in SEL across the district this year, and we've hit on a lot of the key areas. And again, a number of things with students, from Start with Hello Week, the counseling, the second step, Craig's Seeds of Happiness program. And again, creating bullying presentations in Portuguese and Spanish for EL students with Woodland staff. So, these students are getting that content and curriculum too. I've shared the social worker information previously. This piece I want to go into a little more detail. It's promote the success of all students by collaborating with families, community members, and higher education and business partners. And just some data on, just press releases alone. We've created more than 15 press releases in the last year, and they range from like new initiatives to key announcements to whether we hire like a new administrative hire. And we've seen more than 24 feature articles in the Town Crier and more than 12 feature articles in the Milford Daily News. We also get additional coverage from online outlets. That's a little more difficult to track because sometimes we don't know where it goes. But we're seeing, I think, an uptick in our kind of print media this past year, which has been good. And I didn't put sports coverage on here, but we always get great sports coverage just across the board. And we have, both from the Town Crier and the Milford Daily News. Social media campaign. In the last 3 years, and this is kind of shocking to me, but I've tweeted more than 24,800 times.
It's not shocking.
Someone called me addicted.
Kim Kardashian over here.
I'm not getting the same number of likes as like that egg got. I haven't unlocked that secret code. But we have more than 30 active school personnel regularly sharing updates and events, administrators, teachers, and coaches. We have, an active Facebook page where we're constantly updating, whether it's events or information, and we've got a website where I think it's become, like the content's become a little more dynamic, which I think is a good thing as well. If you look at television and radio, we've had a great partnership with Milford TV, and we have 2 Milford TV characters in the room right now, in RJ and Rob, and I appreciate all of Milford TV's support. They do a monthly superintendent video update with me. We've done Talk Soup for the first time. We're going to try to do 3 or 4 of those a year, ideally. There's a ton of Milford TV content, from athletics to coverage of meetings and programs to interviews. Craig and who are we on with to talk about the social media thing?
Oh, Christina.
Christina Cody. I just did an interview on Milford TV for that. We also have regular appearances on WMRC. Jim is great about kind of setting that up, which is fantastic. So I think we're seeing like broader media kind of exposure, especially local media, which I think has been great. I'm not going to talk about this because Craig's going to talk about it in a minute. We've developed nice partnerships with colleges and universities, Framingham State, Mass Bay, LaSalle. We've talked about the early college programs. I think they're really going to start to evolve, and the pace is going to pick up in the next year. We really want to get those courses during the day so they're not an additional course that high school students have to take in the afternoon on top of their regular offerings.
Kevin, real quick.
Sure.
Early college course programs.
Yep.
Do you know of any other schools that work with these guys?
Which,
with these colleges, I'm sorry.
yeah.
besides Milford?
I'm trying
Just
to
want to get like a handle. I mean, I know we're not the only ones. I'm curious
Yeah,
if
there's
who else-
a lot of high schools that are starting to kind of dip their toes into the early college. Like Marlboro is kind of a little further along than I think almost everybody in the state. They've been at it for a little longer. I was just with the Worcester superintendent, and they've just kind of figured out a way. And Worcester State's right in Worcester, so they're able to kind of transport the kids there during the day. We don't have like a Milford University,
Right,
unfortunately. So the high schools are the pace is starting to pick up. The state is putting more of a focus on it. There's been some grant opportunities. And like the LaSalle, the initial LaSalle college class that we're doing this year is through a grant. But I think it's building a relationship that we're going to kind of potentially put some courses into the day next year, their goal.
Just curious who else is out there doing the
No,
same
it's
thing.
it's funny. Again, when I was talking about Massachusetts leading the country in a lot of ways, early college is one of the ways that like New England, and Massachusetts in particular, is just significantly further behind. If you go out west or down south, like this is very common practice. In Massachusetts, like again, I think Marlboro. There's a school in, I want to say, is it Boston or Quincy? That's kind of further along than a lot of other places. But most places are kind of either where we are or a little behind us, and just starting to kind of get into it, where they're offering a couple courses here and there.
Thank you.
Yep. But you go to like California or down south, and like it's kind of ingrained in like how they do business.
Common practice down there.
Yeah. And I'm not quite sure why. I think there's probably there's some cultural reasons. I think there's some labor reasons, but there's a lot of factors that kind of drive that. Right. So I've shared this slide before, so I don't want to go into detail, but I think we're doing a lot of good outreach in the community through things like the Family Bridges program. I think the CPAC. Again, I put the right acronym there this time,
Yes.
Chris.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think you guys have brought in a lot of great speakers and a lot of good programming for
Yes.
parents of students with special needs. Hawk University programming, which Craig's going to speak more about. We've had a number of forums, a number of events to kind of share kind of what we're about. And I think we're going to try to do a lot more with our EL families. That we're kicking off a couple meetings in February, where we're really going to try to reach out and try to figure out how do we better engage some of those families and get them more involved in the day-to-day life of the school. And we've already talked about the attendance strategy, so I don't want to kind of go down that road again. But that's just an update. I'll have a lot more information and evidence at the end of the year that I'll share with the committee.
Anybody got any questions for Kevin?
No, it's a great update.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the
Absolutely.
information.
Just one quick one, just going back to the Stacy after-school program, is that limited to math, or is that ELA
Focus on
support as
math.
well? Just math?
Just
Okay.
math focused. Yep.
I
And
actually have
we're-
one, I have
Oh,
a follow-up question on that too.
Yeah, we're targeting a very specific population for that one, because there's we meet other needs in other ways during the school day.
Could you clarify, is it one person who's teaching the algebra class, and is that same person also doing additional math intervention?
So for the interventionist where we switch the position
Right,
at the beginning of the year, that person is teaching, and I wish I had it in front of me, it's either 2 or 3 algebra classes
okay.
or 2 or 3 intervention kind of, or support within a class.
So they're taking, so that's how they reduced the
Cor-
algebra class
Correct,
size?
yes,
But then when they're not teaching algebra?
They're
then
providing
They're doing
intervention.
intervention, okay, so it's the
Yes.
same person?
yes.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Now, are there multiple intervention specialists?
Yes,
Okay, so this
Yes.
is supporting the 120 students that are receiving intervention, that's not falling on one person, that's falling on.
correct. So it's generally, I don't want to give you the answer because I don't want to give you the wrong answer, but there's more than one person providing intervention support at Stacy. And I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 people. And it might be 3 now. I think it was 2 previously, I think it's 3 now. Is that right, Craig?
2.5,
Might be 2.5.
2.5.
Or 2.6 now, I guess, maybe. Yep.
We talked about, the kind of more, we're focusing on the math at Stacy. I guess, do we feel, is there a gap between that jump from Woodland to Stacy, and is that why we need more
I just put the
attention and
Stacy stuff.
more focus,
Yeah,
or-
I just put the Stacy stuff in there because we hadn't talked about it before.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
like at Woodland, I think we're looking at time on math learning.
Yeah.
We implemented ST Math. We're looking at instructional practices in the classroom. At the high school, we've added that intervention course. We're also, Cicely Tucker, who's the associate principal, is working with our geometry and algebra 1, and algebra 2 teachers, so, for, common assessments and instructional practices. So I think it's happening.
Were we across the board a little bit low? Was there certain?
Yeah,
and
so I
that's
think,
why
yeah,
just
so
trying
I
to
think
think
math
about-
is something where, like, in terms of MCAS, I think ELA we're doing, pretty well
Okay,
across the
yeah.
board.
Right.
For math, our growth is generally good,
Right.
except for the high school, but our achievement is trailing the state,
Correct.
generally,
Right.
and it varies by grade level.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why. Yeah. I mean,
But the
we look
Stacy,
at
I put in there because we
focus.
really hadn't talked about Stacy, and I
Yeah.
didn't want to feel like, at the other presentations, I just want to put a little focus on that. That's why I added that slide.
Okay.
Not because there's a bigger
I
issue with
wasn't
Stacy.
sure. Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
why I asked
yeah,
the
yeah,
question. I wasn't
yeah.
sure if we were trying to focus in, if, again, without MCAS data right in front of me,
Yeah.
did we look at Stacy, that grade level, as, a target audience to try to put more resources at?
We're looking across the board.
It's across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just hadn't talked about it before, so I want
Okay.
to make sure I
Yep.
spoke about it.
Very
It's a
good.
Good question.
Just add to that, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So this past year, we added the additional intervention teacher at the high school to support that intervention program.
Yeah. And I'll call that person a math teacher because they're teaching an intervention course, but they're a general math teacher,
Okay.
high school math teacher. So it's
We
a
added
little
the
different just because
additional-
it's course-based.
We had the additional support
Yeah.
because we knew there was a need there. We
Yep.
knew that was very effective.
Yep.
And so in planning for next year, knowing that there's this bubble that's coming up to the high school, are we looking at the middle school scores to identify the population that's going to potentially need that support next year and ensure that we have the proper staffing to be able to provide the necessary
Yes.
support? Okay.
So where we really need, and I think it's in the sciences where we're really gonna need the extra sections. And we'd need that whether there was a bubble or not a bubble coming up. But in terms of that additional math teacher, we'll be able to cover the needs of any student who's at risk for not passing the MCAS. So we're covered there. I think we've looked at the numbers. It's either 3 years or 5 years out
Okay.
to kind of say, and again, 5 years out is a little more speculation, but 3 years out, we've got a pretty good handle on it, and we've seen kind of a general trend of, when students are falling in kind of that warning and needs improvement area.
Okay.
I just have a clarification question, and I apologize, Craig, you probably already answered it. The iReady is considered an interim assessment tool. Then you talked about the performance assessments. Can you just clarify the difference for me?
Sure. Well, so for iReady and the other program that we're gonna talk about, it's more of like a standardized program.
Okay.
Right, and kids are using Chromebooks and kinda like your standard kinda test.
Yep.
Right? Where a performance assessment is asking kids to do some kind of unique task. So, I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head. I don't know, they're given us, it's almost like a word problem. You're given a scenario and you're asked to create some kind of, some task based on whatever the problem is. And kids, when you think of it that way, kids can answer it in 100 different ways, right? And that's what I think the beauty of a performance assessment is it allows kids to answer it the way that they see fit. They take the skills that are assessed on like the iReady, and then they're applying it. That's really the difference between performance assessment and like a skills-based
Got it.
interim benchmark.
So
like
the alignment to standards, we're really seeing in the iReady in terms of, to the extent we want to see the curriculum and are we
Yeah.
teach, okay.
But
But you're seeing that in the performance
yeah,
assessment
but a
too.
performance assessment, you're going to be looking at however many standards too.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Anybody else? All right, next, thank you, Kevin, by the way. Next on the agenda, report of Assistant Superintendent. You're up,
Let's
Craig.
talk about iReady.
You're right.
That's a great segue.
So, on December 19th, just before we went away for a holiday break, I gave the gift of welcoming 3 sales reps to our district. So our principals and all the curriculum team leaders, we sat through 3 presentations of 3 different assessment tools. I'm not going to name all 3 because one of them didn't quite cut it. Anyways, the three reps were provided an hour to showcase their product to all the principals, all the CTLs. At the conclusion of the presentation, each member of the group filled out a survey. And then after we filled out surveys, we had a discussion about it. And we just started weighing the pros and cons of each of the different platforms. And it was kind of clear that there were 2 that rose to the top. One being iReady and one being Star 360. iReady was a little bit higher throughout our discussion, but I also think that it was a little bit higher because Woodland was already using it. So I think there's kind of a nod towards iReady. But I also didn't think we could just go in that one direction without looking at least one other product. So that's why we brought in 3. So what we're going to do for the rest of this year is the Woodland staff will continue to use iReady, but they also understand that we're going to be using one platform, K-8, hopefully K-12, because there are some high school kids that should be using this tool also. So the reason that we want to go with one platform is so that each teacher, as the kids transition from grade to grade, could see the history of this kid going. And if we start next year, this kid that's in kindergarten, in 8 years, the 8th grade teacher will be able to see all the assessments that this student took in math and ELA. So if the teacher ever questions how the student in front of them got to be where they're at, they could go back and look at a history of just assessments throughout the years. So I think that kind of data we don't have right now, and teachers have been looking for that. So I'm really excited about the prospect of these programs. So starting in, I think, February, Brookside and Memorial, each grade level has 2 teams of teachers of 4 or 5 teachers. So the first grade at Brookside has a group of 4 or 5 teachers, 2 groups of 4 or 5 teachers. One of the groups will do iReady, one of the groups will do 360, and then at Memorial, same thing. At the first grade, one group will do iReady, one group will do 360. And we hope to do it 2 times this year. Normally, we would do it 3 times. We're gonna hope to do it, like I said, in February, and then again at the end of the year. And then we're gonna come together, and kind of make a decision about which one serves us better. Representatives from Woodland, Stacy, and the high school also attend some trainings, and they'll also be given accounts so that they can kind of play around with the platforms. And like I said before, I just think this is a huge step forward for our district. Having the ability to collect data on a consistent basis in benchmark assessments, and having those in place so that we can look at expectations across a grade level, and teachers can talk about those expectations and where their students are as compared to other classrooms. And again, not in an evaluative way, but more of, geez, our kids are supposed to be here, my kids aren't quite there, what are you doing differently than me? Or, what kind of interventions do you suggest? Because I can see that your kids, you're able to close the gap a little bit better than I can. So, but I also, I guess I don't want to pretend like that's not going to be a hard process either, because it's difficult for teachers to look at their data and then bring it to another group of educators and kind of talk about it. I think you naturally our teachers are competitive, and they want to do what's right for their kids, and if their kids aren't quite making it, it's difficult to bring that kind of data in front of your colleagues. So I do think that it is going to be a kind of a culture change that in some places might be a little slower to develop than in other places. So, but I think I'm optimistic that this is going to be it's going to be great for our district in moving forward. So we're excited. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Do you envision that the coaches and the curriculum directors we've been talking about accessing that data regularly to
Yep.
identify where there's areas for improvement in
Absolutely.
conversations?
I right now our coaches are kind of looking at ST math data, for example, because that's the kind of data that we have. But Kim's able to look at some of the iReady data also, and then be able to just say, hey, I'm going to run this group because I noticed that there was some gaps here where kids aren't performing well in this area. I think we have to be careful when we start talking about principals and directors looking at it. Not that then I don't want them to, because they certainly should. It's just what do they do with it, right? Eventually everyone has to be accountable for the data, but I think I'd want to proceed cautiously at the beginning anyways, until people are just comfortable looking at data and getting that kind of ingrained in our school cultures.
Yeah, I just wanted to, thank you for the work on that. I know that's probably taking an inordinate amount of your time. I think when you have a district with the makeup of ours, with the K2s, people who work in a K2 really aren't that entrenched in data.
Mhm.
There is no MCAS. It's just a very different way of living, and some of the other
Mhm.
assessments that we use are a little more subjective. So I think starting that work at the K2 level is hugely important when we talk about how do we improve pre-K through 12, helping our teachers have some very objective data as an additional point to look for who needs interventions and how to share information with parents is really critically important. So I'm really happy to hear that we're moving that way.
And I guess to your point as well is, when you think of kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, you're talking about 17 teachers, kids, so 17 math teachers, 17 ELA teachers, 17 social studies teachers, versus when they get to fifth grade, you're talking 3, right? So to get 17 people on the same page is a little more difficult than to get 3 people on the same page. So I agree, that's another reason why that's important.
What was the frequency of the GMAT and the grade that they're taking
Same.
right now?
So that was they're not taking it now, cause this
Well,
has replaced it, right?
Yeah, I know they're replacing it.
So,
Is it more frequency with the
no.
iReady, or is it in the
It
kind
could
of
be,
same,
it could be,
same
but,
assessment schedule?
sorry to interrupt. It
No,
could
no
be, it could be, more frequently,
Mhm.
but ideally, I think, we're looking at, GMA and grade was twice a year. For some kids though, it was 3 times a year.
Okay.
Kids that weren't quite making the cut were being, evaluated in the middle, assessed in the middle of the year too. But for most kids, it was beginning of the year, end of the year. I think with iReady or Star 360, it's going to be at least 3 times a year. I think for kids in intervention, it might be 4 times a year, it might be
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
But the one difference I think with 360 is with 360, you could use that system for exit tickets at any given point. So like if you just wanted to tease out, like we were working on fractions today, if I just wanted to give a quick 6-question assessment on fractions, Star 360 could do it. You could just have them go boom and done. Where it's a little different with iReady. So pluses and minuses for both.
Okay. Is there any correlation between these assessment tools, like the Star Sheet 360 and iReady, and eventually going into the MCAS for them? Is there?
Yeah, so they're all aligned to the standards.
Right.
So, and, you know, the MCAS is standards based.
Right.
So, yeah,
In a sense, in comparison to like a GMAID or a grade.
very
how-
different.
And how the interface was, so would the interface of an iReady or Star Sheet 360 be kind of, I've never seen an MCAS test.
Oh,
So
so,
I guess, is the interface going to be helpful for the students, like in a sense, would it prepare them to
maybe,
for when they first see an MCAS test?
maybe.
And I know there's practices for MCAS.
Yeah,
but-
they don't exactly look like an MCAS, and where these are different too is it's adaptive. So if you get one right, it's going to ask you a harder question.
Sure.
If you get another one right, it's going to ask you a harder question. If you get 2 wrong, it'll ratchet it down,
Okay.
so it can find out where you are. Where an MCAS, it isn't like that. It's just the same.
It's just questions. Okay.
But as far as the way it looks, not quite.
Okay.
But it's online. I mean,
Right. It's the comfort level with using
exactly.
a digital tool to take the test.
Exactly, and that's good point, because that's part of our pilot too. Is we are asking kindergarten teachers to give it this year as part of the pilot before we actually purchase it, to see if, is it valuable for kindergarten kids to take an assessment like this? Are we getting the data that I don't know. I don't want to force kindergarten kids to do something that's not really helping us, right? So, is it appropriate to start in kindergarten or first grade? So that's gonna be part of the pilot too. Wait, second part, right? Unless there's,
Oh.
No, I'm good.
did you have a question?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
The teachers, when they came in and spoke with us last month, they were talking about the embedded lesson plans.
Yep.
And already does Star 360 also have that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Similar, it's very similar, but it also, there's other platforms that it's kinda complicated, but there's other platforms that, join up with it too. I don't know the correct words,
I just
but.
remember the teachers giving feedback that they really liked that, like if they could see that their students were maybe weak in a certain area, then there was a lesson plan
Yeah.
that kind of addressed that specific issue, so I thought that was a neat tool.
And with iReady, it comes with all these curriculum materials too. Well, it doesn't come with it. It's a piece of it. I think it's an additional $20 a kid or something.
So that was my next question, is there a big cost difference between them?
No, I don't know, I think we can get them for the same price, honestly. But then there's other add-ons. But the other thing, 360 comes with a Spanish version too, where iReady doesn't, so.
Craig, you'd be procuring ELA and math, is that?
Mhm.
Okay. And K through 12, do they offer more? Like, is there a science component? Later on?
No.
Okay.
One of them had a writing component, but no thanks on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Second piece? Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
Yeah, we're good. I'm sorry, I was writing and stopped. I apologize.
So I just want to talk just a couple minutes about the social networking presentation that we're going to have on Wednesday. Joni Geltman, she's a therapist and a parenting coach and a consultant for 30 years, but she's also an instructor at Curry College. Through our partnership with the Milford, Massachusetts Foundation for Education and Hawk University, we're able to provide this for free for parents. So we're hoping that parents, a lot of parents come out. The focus on the talk will be how to understanding how the emotional brain of a teen gets turned on by social networking, understanding how the imaginary audience influences your teen's performing on social media, learning which apps are safe and which are unsafe, what are some strategies to monitor and set limits around phone and internet use, and then learning how our own behavior with phones and computers can positively and negatively influence our kids. So again, it's on Wednesday from 7 to 9 at Stacy. It's free. We're targeting the middle school parents. However, we're also welcoming high school parents and Woodland parents, Brookside Memorial parents too. A piece of what she's going to talk about is when's the appropriate time to put these devices in your children's hands. So I think there's going to be a time for questions and answers, but I also think that what you get out of the presentation, I think will help everyone tremendously. So I think it's needed. Any questions? All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Miss Perry.
We have for the committee's approval this evening, 12 warrants in the amount of $1,033,944.08.
I get a motion to approve that enormous amount of money. Motion by Jim, seconded by Chris. All in favor? Thank you.
We also have a FY19 budget update. I also would like to make a note that I gave out 3 handouts. The governor passed or moved his number forward for the Milford Public Schools yesterday. And again, the Foundation Budget Review Commission was taken into consideration when he moved his budget forward, which will now be referred to as the Act to Promote Equity and Excellence in Education. And the goal of that, building that budget allocation increased to communities will go through FY22. And we did see, again, a 7.7% increase over the previous year funding. So the new Chapter 70 proposed allocation that we have currently is built into our budget with the approved budget that we have moved forward for FY20, which again will decrease the local impact from where we were a few weeks ago. However, I do just want to point out, I did give you the cherry sheet estimates from 19 to 20 so that you can see how the governor's budget in FY19 moved forward to the conference committee. There was a slight increase with the final budget move forward in 19. So if in fact that same philosophy moves forward in FY20, we could see additional funding when it's finalized for FY20 for Milford. There's one other line item that I want to point out to the committee, If you look at FY19, again, part of the foundation budget reserve is the charter tuition reimbursement number. Now, that was also discussed in length and reviewed in terms of a greater allocation for cities and towns. So if we look at FY19, it was moved forward and finalized at $36,000. Now, that goes directly to the town, that does not come to the district. However, the governor's proposal does move the foundation's recommendation forward, and right now for Milford, that would be at $199,000. Under FY20, you can see the school choice receiving number. So that's at $751,000. That does come directly to the schools in the form of the revolving. However, my point is, if you take the governor's proposal and you add the charter, that's Milford's education assessment for funding. And again, it still has, 3 more houses to go through. But
Yeah.
from the previous year, the trend is that the governor's budget doesn't get moved too far, either down or up.
And his budget tends to be a little more conservative than,
So,
yeah.
And last year when we were going through the budgeting process, we used the cherry sheet estimate, right? So did we use the 23.1 million, or did we use?
we gave an increase over FY18, but not to the point of 7.7%,
Right.
the final number.
Because the average Joe's been about 5.3%, so the 7.7 is like just the foundation budget kind of review committee. I think that proposal kind of moving forward a little more aggressively.
But
And
we
there
were
was-
lower, Joe, to your point. We didn't use the governor's budget.
Right. By my calculation, I think we were around seven or 800,000 lower than what actually came through in state aid, which drops to the bottom line on the town side.
It does. That's correct. The committee also has a list of personnel hired from our previous meeting. No vote is required. We do have a professional development request for course reimbursement in the amount of $20,241.60.
I get a motion to approve that?
One quick question on
Yep.
that, just in more, sorry, I'm not on that page, but there's obviously, variations in that, Kevin. Do
Yep.
we ever limit the amount of, I guess, the overall coursework per year, but do we ever limit a specific course? If I look at some of them, when you look at the credit hours, some are, a few $100s and some maybe a couple $1,000s.
Yeah, so Kath, you know what that number is?
Sure. There's an actual language in the contract that delegates the highest credit of a Massachusetts institution college. And I believe the 3-credit course comes in right around 2,800 as a max for
And then
reimbursement.
there's also a cap on how much per year as well, correct?
Okay.
As an
Like
association.
as a total.
For the budget.
And the only one that stood out, there was one on here for $3,600. That's why, for 3 credits, where a lot of them, again, are around, range from $250 up to, that $2,000. So again, just asking about it, just from, I guess, from my own education, I know obviously depending on where you get your coursework done to the actual course itself is gonna vary. That was the one that kind of stood out to me, that, for that amount, which just seemed to be a little bit higher than the others, that's all.
And I believe it's driven by the Massachusetts Institute for Pharmacy schooling. And this very well could be as high as 3,600 now.
Okay.
I mean, I could definitely find the exact number for you,
I
Chris.
think, it's great that we challenge our staff to go and increase their education and their professional development. So certainly, just trying to make sure that we're, responsible with our spending, and just understand that.
Yeah, so there's a course cap as well as an overall cap
Mhm.
Okay.
per year.
And lastly, we do have a out-of-state travel request for Jen Walsh, who is requesting to attend the NBA All-Star Weekend in February in Charlotte, North Carolina, with Ashley Aldridge, a Special Olympic athlete from Milford who's been selected to participate, not just out of the United States, but out of the entire world. There were candidates from all over the world, and Jen, of course, never feeling defeated and not wishing to take the time to write an application on Ashley's behalf, who's just fabulous. And never gives up for our Milford athletes and knows no boundaries. The only hesitation I have is Jen and Ashley and Charlotte alone. It'll never be the same, so just consider that when you're taking your vote. But the request is for February 13th, 14th, and 15th, and there's no cost. It's simply allowing Jen to travel out of state.
I think it's a no-brainer, but can I get a motion to accept? Motion by Jim, seconded by Megan. All in favor?
And I think the game's gonna actually be on national TV,
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that.
so, for All-Star Weekend.
Oh, and we need a vote on the professional development too, so.
Oh, sorry.
I get a motion by Jim, seconded by Laura. All in favor?
I blame Chris for that.
Exactly, sorry, yeah, distracted.
One other quick question, Kathy. You may or might not know this. When do you typically start our yearly audits of the schools?
The annual audit actually is why I look the way I do tonight. It's next week. So it's preparing this week for all the material that they'll be reviewing. And in fact, the schools, unlike the town, we go through two separate audits. We have our end-of-year audit, which is driven by the Department of Education, because when we upload our end-of-the-year report, it drives the foundation budget and it drives the net school spending, of which we have an agreement on cost allocation relative to what the town is spending on our schools. So all of those numbers are vetted in addition to following through with our policies and procedures and making sure that, in fact, the school committee is following their own policies as well as the town policies. In addition, they will come in and they review all of our grants, our revolving revenue expenses. The Department of Nutrition, they'll review with Carla her entire program. It's very detailed, and they will be here for 3 days.
And we're starting the process of that yearly audit.
We're bringing all the information that they've requested from us for next week, and Kevin has kindly donated his office for them to work out of.
Which I do on an annual basis. They have to listen to my accountant jokes, though.
Thank you, Kathy.
Oh, you're welcome.
And that's it for you. Subcommittee
Oh,
updates.
can we, sorry,
Yep.
Mr. Chair, the gifts, there's quite a few.
Oh, crap, yep. Right up. Thank you for reminding me. Sorry. I got a bunch of gifts tonight, so we'll, I'll go through them all and then we'll vote them all at the end if that's cool with the committee. All right, first one we have is from Paul Gunnar-Rotman, in the amount of $25 for the Family Network. Thank you. The next one is for the Community Foundation of North Central Mass, in the amount of $5,000, for the purpose of SWAT and Mental Health Institute instructional grant.
And can I jump in on that one
Yeah,
real quick,
yeah,
Joe?
please.
Celeste Sally, who's one of our middle school teachers, wrote that grant. I just want to give her just kudos for kind of bringing those kind of resources to bear at Stacy Middle School. So I just want to just bring the committee's attention. That was a grant written by one of our teachers, Celeste Sally. So I give her a lot of credit.
Oh, wow.
Next is from Astrid Pagnara, in the amount of $10 for the Family Network. Next is Nicholas and Jamie Catone, also for the School Family Network, for $25. Schwab Charitable, also for the Family Network in the amount of $100. We have Wayne and Misty Albert, contributing $50 for the Family Community Network. Edwin and Marlon Mendoza, contributing $25 for the Family and Community Network. Austin and Marissa Litvek, donating $50 for the Family Community Network. Michael Gimnez, donating $25 for the Family Community Network. Lynn Patton, also donating $25 to the Family and Community Network. We also have Friends of Milford Area Special Olympics donating $1,250 for the Special Olympics. We have, last but not least, Blue Linux Corporation donating $3,000 to our Building and Trade course,
Which is awesome, too.
which is huge.
I mean, they're all awesome.
Thank you to everyone who's donating all this stuff. This is great. Can I get a motion to accept these gifts? Motion by Megan, seconded by Jen. All in favor? Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. Moving along to subcommittee updates. Do we have any updates on subcommittees? No? No? All right. Laura, I'm sorry.
The Health and Safety Committee met in January at the beginning of the month. So the committee spent time discussing the role of the committee and establishing some goals for the year. We decided on a calendar for the remainder of this school year and discussed best ways to communicate the information to the rest of the school community. So ultimately, we decided Ellen Samiaggio, a teacher at Memorial, she's going to send out meeting minutes via email to the teachers union. And our next meeting is scheduled for actually, in a couple weeks on the 7th of February.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Maybe just to follow up.
Sure.
Joe, so the committee met for the working session to talk about school committee goals.
Okay.
And so Laura and I have circled back up on that and have a draft document that we'll present to the policy subcommittee at its next meeting and then bring it forward to the full committee.
Awesome.
So just as follow up to that.
Thank you. Jim?
So the marketing meeting, the marketing subcommittee met. We're gonna review the showcase and MHS visits. Gonna try to put a little more horsepower behind that. Take a look at the structure for the showcase. I could say that, and look for ways to try to socialize that more effectively. In addition, I'm going to start my self-proclaimed administrator spotlight series again for 2019 and start dragging everybody onto the radio and hopefully this year for Milford TV.
Awesome. Please still do the radio. I like listening to it in the morning.
Yeah, I will do the radio. We usually talk about you
I know
on
you
the
do.
air.
I know.
Ray has about 5 minutes of questions before we get to the actual guest, which always cracks me up.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
I don't think we talked about the Citizens for Milford forum that happened last week.
We have not?
I do think it's worth mention that a number of members of our administrative team, plus school committee members, were there. Another night out. I see a lot of things on the calendar with a lot of our admin team out, and I thought between Craig and Kevin and Josh and Jen, Lucy, the presentations were really stellar and really informative for our community members. It was pretty well attended, and I think there was a lot of very interesting information about our students, our school community, our demographics, and what our school's doing to support our students.
Yeah, it was well received too. I mean, there was a lot of people there, more than we've had in some of our forums and everything, which is well. And there's a lot of good questions that were asked as well. And I learned some stuff out of that too. Josh gives a great presentation no matter what he does, and it's easy to follow when he gives it. Thank you for mentioning that, Jim. All right. Next on the agenda, school liaison updates. Has anyone had the chance to go to their schools yet? No?
I have some updates from
Sure.
Stacy, I can share. So Stacy, first time this year, rolled out the principals list and the honor roll. To obtain the principals list, students must maintain an average of at least 90 in all subjects and specials, and a minimum of 85 for the honor roll. Additionally, they must maintain a 1 or 2 in both conduct and effort. Overall, this initiative has been very well received, and I would like to issue congratulations to the 309 students who made either the principal or honor roll for first trimester. That's published on Stacy's website. Additionally, they just finished their 5th lesson for all grades in a series of 5 supporting SEL initiatives, as was outlined in their school improvement plan, so I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that. The Hamahawk Y has been offering some after-school classes, including hip-hop, acting and improv, and animation, so those start this month, so exciting for the students participating in that. As well, rehearsals are underway for their spring musical, Dear Edwina, So those dates will be forthcoming in terms of the show. And this is not unique to Stacy, but just sharing, the Milford Public Schools vertical concert will be held on Wednesday, February 6th. So for musicians across the district at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Sure.
Jim?
Yeah, I just wanted to say congratulations to the students in the business program. I had the opportunity to work this entire semester with 2 groups of 5 kids that were, this is the first year they've piloted the business program, and the idea was to develop a startup organization, a startup environment. So I know that there were 5 area organizations. Dell EMC was one of them, Caterpillar was one of them, Milford Fed, Consigli, Waters, and I think I'm missing one, or is that it?
You might have gotten them all.
I think that's the whole thing. So tomorrow morning, they're gonna unveil their projects, and their PowerPoints, and they're gonna do their pitch in a Shark Tank-like environment right here, at 8 a.m. And I just wanted to say it was just an amazing experience for me. And, you know, so personally, it was probably the closest I'll ever get to education, but it was just amazing. So I'm very much looking forward to the presentations tomorrow, but it's such a great program. And there was, the kids were just so engaged and really locked in, and it was just very collaborative, very communicative, a lot of ideas and a lot of stuff that was shared. It wasn't a situation where, they just came in and heard about stuff. So it was very interactive. Alex Dion and Fernando Rua did a phenomenal job with the program. I just want to give a shout out to them as well. So looking forward to the final presentations tomorrow, but just a great program overall.
So if I can echo what Jim was, because both groups kind of presented to me too, and we kind of, it's amazing kind of where they started to kind of, and it'll be interesting to see where they end up, because the questions they were asking, I think the teachers designed a very iterative process, so the kids were kind of had a proposal, got some feedback, made an adjustment. So it was an awesome experience, and I think they got a lot of feedback from a lot of different folks, which was great.
Yeah, it's very good. Also, shout out to Malcolm Zale for videoing and putting a small little montage together. He does it's no secret. Malcolm is amazing. So I just want to say that, Malcolm, if you're watching, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. All right, moving right along, future agenda.
I have
I'm sorry,
I have
Laura.
Brookside updates. So Brookside started new Hawks program. So going along with the PBIS, it was like a school-wide initiative, basically to foster more community spirit amongst the students and teachers. So they designed this program where they have 4 houses, each made up of different grade levels, and the students can earn Hawk passes from their teachers, and then they're competing to basically bring their Hawks to the nest that's basically in the main lobby of the school. So the house that earns the most Hawks in their nest gets to possibly wear their class color, have a dance party, extra recess time, decorated lunch tables, things like that. So my daughters happen to be in different houses, so it's kind of fun at night. They're talking about there's a little healthy competition going on, which is nice. But I also want to give a shout out to the high school sports captains, because they came down from the high school and joined us at Brookside, and they dressed up in the mascot, and they were able to kick off the event. And I think the students at Brookside really appreciated their efforts, and it was a nice school-wide or district-wide community spirit that was being shown, so that was good. And then the box program is coming back to Brookside as well. That's run by Lisa White, and that's returning for the month of February. That's the before physical activity program, which really helps the students, learn during the day when they get that exercise in the morning. So that's a volunteer program. Students can sign up in advance if they want to participate, and it's free.
We've seen really good attendance for the box program,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
which has
that's
been
coming
really
back.
nice.
And then the last thing is that PTO is sponsoring a dinner dance on Thursday, February 7th from 6:30 to 8:30. This year's dance is a Disney theme, and it's going to be here at the high school in the cafeteria, and you do need to purchase tickets in advance for that. And that's it.
Thank you, Laura. Anybody else?
Just a quick update.
Go ahead,
Shining Star. So just let people know that registration is now open for Shining Star, and packets are available in the main office. Registration for current Shining Star students and siblings will be done on February 4th and 5th, and then registration for new Shining Star students will be done on March 11th and 12th.
Thank you, Joe. All right, moving along, future agenda items. Anyone want to put anything on for the next agenda? Old business. Anyone wanna bring up some old stuff?
I think,
Yep, go ahead.
Kevin, you were gonna provide us a timeline for when we're gonna be able to do some more business, building tours, for the district?
Yes,
So
yes,
if you-
I'll send those out,
Okay, yeah, just an update on, you know, what that looks like.
definitely.
Go ahead, Jim.
I know Kevin mentioned that there was the forum on the budget next week? Or the
It'll be
week
2 weeks
after?
away.
2 weeks away.
February 5th, I think it is.
And when's the next committee budget discussion?
That is the 4th.
Is my memory.
The forum,
I want
okay.
to say the 4th, and we're gonna send those invitations out.
And that's a full committee, not the subcommittee, right?
Yeah, we'll invite the full committee to the meeting, correct.
That invitation has not gone out yet?
I don't believe so.
Okay, good. Good enough. I don't have it, so, alright.
Alright, and old business. And there is no executive session tonight, so can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion by Jim, seconded by Megan. All in favor? Thank you and good night.